Grilled cheese and tomato soup go together like two peas in a pod. I've been making grilled cheese ever since I was a kid, but only now do I feel like I've truly perfected it. My very first step whenever making a grilled cheese is starting off with the tomato soup. I just call it a sheet tray soup, and that's because everything is gonna happen on this tray right here. It's probably the easiest soup you'll ever make. For this one, all we do is layer down a bunch of tomatoes, preferably tomatoes that are still on the vine, because just by looking at them and even smelling them, you know that they're fresh. I'll move this off to the side. Then I'll quarter up a nice yellow onion. I guess if you really love onion, you could always do more, but since it's a tomato soup, I want the tomatoes to be the hero. Chop off all those little edge pieces. And the third and final main ingredient in this tomato soup is garlic, which I'll open by smashing down. And again, because I don't want anything to be overpowered, I'm only gonna use one whole clove. Make sure you smash that clove open with the palm of your hand and your knife. That way it's gonna really release all of that extra garlicky flavor, and it'll almost spread throughout the sheet tray when you cook these tomatoes. Once we've chopped up the rest of our ingredients, I will spread the garlic nicely throughout the sheet tray. And then same thing with your onion. Go ahead and wedge that all throughout the tray just so it's spread nice and even. We'll hit everything with a nice, generous drizzle of olive oil, a good even coating of salt, and to finish, some fresh cracked black pepper. Really try to cover everything as much as you can. It's gonna give you more flavor while it cooks. This is why I call it a sheet tray soup. This whole tray of ingredients is now gonna cook in the oven at 425 Fahrenheit until it's nice and softened. And like I said, easiest soup you'll ever make. While our soup is in the oven, let's work on that grilled cheese. For the grilled cheese, I'm gonna use 3 different types of cheese on the inside. The first is fontina. The second, the one I'm trimming right now, is a nice soft Gouda. And the third, which to me you can't make a grilled cheese without, is a classic block of cheddar. You can use sliced cheese when making a grilled cheese if you want, but it's not gonna melt as easy as if you use grated cheese, which is what we're gonna do. And my first tip for grating is to grate the long way, like this, instead of the short way, like this. The real idea with this is that it'll give us a stringier, cheesier grilled cheese. That should be enough cheddar. As you can see, I've got those beautiful, really nice long strands here. Then same thing with our fontina. Sometimes it can be a struggle to grate your cheese if it's too warm. So if you have a block of cheese like this and you know you're gonna be grating it, toss it in the fridge or freezer for a few minutes before you grate it. It'll make your life a lot easier. Our last cheese is a good old Gouda. Notice how I'm kind of starting to grate sideways with the Gouda. By grating at that angle, I get a really nice long face on the Gouda, and that way I've kind of created something here that I can get these long strands with. When you're making your own grilled cheese, get creative. You can use whatever cheese you want. Now, because we want every bite of our grilled cheese and tomato soup to be flavorful and even, it's important now that you take a bowl, toss all of that cheese inside your bowl. I definitely grated more than I needed, but that's okay. And then get in there gently with your hands and mix. Don't be pressing any of the cheese together quite yet, because that'll make it a lot harder to mix evenly. But you should notice that with even just a few gentle tosses and turns of the cheese, I've already got this really nice even mix. Set your cheese off to the side and grab your bread. This is my bread of choice. I happen to love a good loaf of sourdough. I think I love sourdough bread so much for a grilled cheese because it's hard enough that you can get a really nice crust on the outside, but it's also soft and chewy, and it's got those nice air bubbles in there, and something about it is just perfect. You obviously don't need to start off with a whole loaf like this. You can buy pre-sliced sourdough, but for me, I like to choose my slices myself. There's something very satisfying about being able to cut your own sourdough bread. I can already tell this is gonna be a good grilled cheese. Yep, that'll do. It looks like our soup is almost done, so the last thing I need to do here is finish preparing the grilled cheese. I need to have it ready to cook once that soup is finished. We'll use this for the inside of our grilled cheese, which means first we need to work on the outsides. I like to use a combination of butter and mayonnaise on the outside of my grilled cheese. It gives off the perfect combination of the golden brown look that you're going for, but also has that perfect, unique, balanced flavor that you get from the mayonnaise. Once I've spread a nice layer of that softened butter all across the outsides of each piece of bread, I will lightly paint over the top of that with some mayonnaise. I know this might look and sound a little bit weird, but if you just think about it, mayonnaise is just egg yolks and oil. And as you may know from baking, painting an egg wash over something is what gives it that really nice golden brown look, and obviously oil is used to crisp up and fry everything. So trust me when I say that this combination you're looking at here is the perfect recipe for the most beautiful grilled cheese crust you'll ever see. My final step for the perfect grilled cheese exterior is actually adding on a little bit of Parmesan cheese. And I know this also may sound strange, but every time you take a bite, you're gonna get that hit of umami saltiness. And that's what I love about putting Parmesan cheese on the outside. Now that the outsides of our grilled cheese are ready, I'll place them down on a wire rack, just so we don't ruin all of that hard work. And now it's time to build the more important part, the cheesy inside. I've found that But the best way to do this part is to put all of the cheese on one side. You want to pack it down just enough that it's going to hold there, nice and strong. And you'll also notice that I really like to get up close and personal with my grilled cheese here, because it is key that you look at every single angle and make sure that you've filled in all those little holes with extra cheese. I don't mess around with my grilled cheese. The other thing is make sure you don't have too much cheese, because then you're going to struggle to melt it. And I'm guilty of this. It is very easy to get too excited and put way too much cheese on there. But this to me looks like the perfect amount, which means we can close it up. I'll move it off to the side because it's time to finish off our tomato soup. Wow. Oh my gosh. I can't even begin to describe the smell that comes off of this tray when you pull it out of the oven. That is stunning. While I let this cool down for a moment, you might have noticed that I have this saucepan. It's been kind of resting off to the side throughout our cooking process here. And what I'm going to do with that is fill it up with water and get that up to a nice quick boil. This is kind of our safety backup liquid if our tomato soup needs to be thinner. But whether or not you need extra liquid is going to be very dependent on what kind of tomatoes you use and even what time of year you're making this recipe. It really all comes down to how much water is in those tomatoes. And I actually see that we have a lot of liquid, so we might be fine without extra water. I'm going to shift my tomatoes off to the side. In comes my blender. And before we blend, I'm going to take the vines off my tomatoes, because nobody wants to eat a tomato soup with their grilled cheese that has a bunch of vines ground up in there. I could understand why, watching me do this, you could maybe want to use vineless tomatoes when you're making your grilled cheese and tomato soup, which I would fully understand. But there is something about the vine that just tells you that these are really fresh. Once you've gotten off all those vines, go ahead and scrape off everything from the bottom of your pan. That way you make sure you get all those delicious little bits that you're going to want in that soup. All of that goes right into your blender. I really do think that if a lot of you try this method for making soup just once, you're going to want to start making your soup this way from now on. It saves a lot of mess in your kitchen, and it basically just sits there in the oven and does all the work for you, so that by the time it's done, you could have done a bunch of other things. Start by blending on low, and then gradually increase the intensity and just let it blend. Now you should already be able to see that it's pretty silky and creamy, but I am noticing that we need a bit more water. So what I'll do is pour a bit of that boiling water onto our tray, and then I'll mix it around just to get all the extra flavor off the tray, anything we might have missed. And this should help to make it even smoother and the correct consistency. Now let's blend again. Now we're starting to get really almost light and foamy, which for me means it's time we can start to finish it up. So I'll add in a little splash of cream, then a touch more of fresh cracked black pepper, and just the tiniest pinch of salt. And I'll just give it one final gentle blend. Just a touch more liquid. I'm only fine-tuning my soup at this point. And with that, my soup is done. Ooh, that is exactly what we're going for. A soup that looks like this, I call it fluffy, because it really is almost light and airy and a little bit fluffy. Follow those steps that we just went through and you'll get this beautiful velvety tomato soup. And despite its incredible looks, the best part really is the taste. My tomato soup is done. I'll sit it off to the side and just let it sit on low heat. We don't want to boil it because that could ruin it. Now for the main event, the grilled cheese. Cooking grilled cheese is not easy. It sounds like one of the most basic and simple foods, but it's actually one that a surprising number of people struggle with. The difficult part about cooking a grilled cheese is that it's all about temperature control. You need to make sure that the inside is melted and the outside is toasted, and that all happens together at the same time. To cook, start your pan out with a bit of butter over medium heat, and then place down that grilled cheese. That's the sizzling sound that I'm going for. Nothing too intense, but just enough that you know the pan is nice and hot. As a first step, kind of like cooking a steak, I'm gonna gently press down on all parts of my grilled cheese to make sure that I'm getting even contact across the whole pan. That, of course, will lead to even browning. And at this stage, it's really all about focus. If you see any signs of any burning, turn that heat down just a little bit. When you start to smell and feel like you have a nice golden bottom, go ahead and flip. This is actually a good demonstration because I can see that this side of my pan is not browning as much as this side. So all I'm gonna do is slide the pan up just a tiny bit. That should keep things more even on this other side. And about now in the cooking process is when I like to start putting on that lid. What that's gonna do is you'll slowly see the lid start to fog up here, and that's basically gonna create some steam on the inside and ultimately melt down some of that cheese. Nobody likes a grilled cheese where all the cheese on the inside isn't melted. Oh my God, a volcano. Whoa, that's amazing. That means I need to turn down my heat though. Here we go. With your grilled cheese crust, that's the sound that you're going for. And you are gonna notice that with the Parmesan cheese, it's gonna get a little bit more stuck to the pan. So if you're nervous about that, or if you don't have very good non-stick pans, I'd probably skip the Parmesan cheese. But what it's also gonna do is create those little laced patterns on the edge there, which are absolutely delicious. This is great. This is what we're going for. Nice golden brown crispy on the edges, and barely pushing the limit there on the darkness. You'll notice that I'm watching carefully, turning the heat up, turning the heat down, rotating the pan all around so it's hitting different areas of the grilled cheese. I'm even moving the actual grilled cheese around all the time. This is all because grilled cheese is a very patient and specific process. You can't rush it or you'll burn the outside, but you also can't go too slow. You need to move just at the right pace, controlling all the different variables at any given time to make sure that your grilled cheese is getting the proper care that it needs. I'll even tilt my pan and add just a little bit of water in there and then put the lid on. And as long as I make sure my pan is tilted and the water doesn't touch the grilled cheese, you'll see that it'll start to evaporate onto the lid of my pan and create even more steam, which will help to melt that cheese even faster. Once I think the cheese is melted, my one final step, working quickly, is to clean off the center of my pan. Then all across the center, I'll grate some Parmesan cheese in basically the exact footprint of what my grilled cheese looks like in the pan. Then I'll place that grilled cheese down right over that Parmesan cheese, and one more time with the lid, just to keep melting it. We'll let that set. Let's not get too excited and burn anything now. We have this incredible tomato soup. We have a perfect grilled cheese. Don't try to work too quick. This is gonna take you time. What we're basically creating is a final, thicker crust of Parmesan cheese just on one side of the grilled cheese, because the flavor that that's gonna bring to every bite is incredible. If you think about it this way, it takes you an extra 90 seconds to make this extra crust on the grilled cheese, and it makes it about twice as good. When I start to see some smoke, usually that means that I can start to pull it up. Oh gosh, listen. And look at those little crispy bits. What we've created here is this perfect thin layer across the whole grilled cheese that's gonna make it extra crispy when we bite, but also it's a whole new layer of flavor. On this side, we've got that traditional crust, and on this side, a Parmesan crust. To plate our grilled cheese, I will add my tomato soup into a bowl, a couple leaves of parsley if you wanna be fancy, and just a little drizzle of olive oil, maybe a bit of fresh cracked pepper too. And with the grilled cheese, there are a lot of ways to open it up, but I think my favorite has always been to just tear it open with your hands. And of course, you really can't finish it off without a nice dip into the tomato soup. And it's so good.